Sur la santé revenue, sur le risque disparu, sur l'espoir sans souvenir, j'écris ton nom. On the abstraction without desire, on the naked solitude, on the marches of death, I write your name. Et par le pouvoir d'un mot, je recommence ma vie. Je suis né pour te connaître, pour te nommer. And for the want of a word, I renew my life. I was born to know you, to name you. Liberté, Paul Éluard.
Welcome to the Elixir podcast, where we ask people from all walks of life and from around the world what their favourite poem is and why it's important to them, why or how it speaks to their heart. If you have a poem that you would like to share and would like to appear on the podcast, please contact me at helenmoon@me.com. Welcome once again to the Elixir Poetry Podcast, the podcast where we ask people from around the world if they have a poem they like and we ask them why. Today we're talking to Quitterie, who is in Montreal, and she's going to talk to us about Paul Éluard. Is that right?
Yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast, Quitterie. Which is the poem that you're going to read to us?
I'm going to write Liberté by Paul Éluard.
Okay. Would you like to read it to us first?
Yeah, sure. On my school notebooks, on my desk and on the trees, on the sand of the snow, I write your name. On the pages I have read, on all the white pages, stone, blood, paper, or ash, I write your name. On the images of gold, on the weapons of the warriors, on the crown of the king, I write your name. On the jungle and the desert, on the nest and on the briar, on the echo of my childhood, I write your name. On the field, on the horizon, on the bird's wing, on the meal and of the shadows, I write your name. On each eve of daybreak, on the sea, on the boats, on the demented mountain top, I write your name. On the froth of the clouds, on the sweat of the storm, on the dense rain and the flat, I write your name. On the high path, on the deployed roof, on the crowd-thronged square, I write your name. On the lamp which is lit, on the lamp which is not, on my reunited thought, I write your name. On my dog, great-hearted and greedy, on his pricked ears, on his blundering paws, I write your name. On the harmony of the flesh, on the faces of my friends, on each outstretched hand, I write your name. On the windows of surprises, on a pair of expectant lips, in a state far deeper than silence, I write your name. On abstraction without desire, on naked solitude, on the marches of death, I write your name. And for the want of a word, I renew my life, for I was born to know you, to name you, Liberté, by Paul Éluard.
Wow. Wow. Okay, Quitterie, when did you come across this poem, first of all?
Well, I think it's one of the first poem I ever learned by heart in middle school. So I think I was 6 or 7 years old max the first time I encountered it. It's pretty popular to learn it in French when you're in middle school. You either there's some classics poem most French kids knows, and this one is part of them. But I don't know, I always remembered it since I learned it for the first time. So it's kind of crazy.
And why why do you like it so much?
Well, it's been written during the German occupation of France. So even though it's like written in a really particular context, I think that by naming all those tiny and random places, it's kind of like if all parts of my life are concerned by the idea of liberty, and it always has this kind of effect on me, no matter how many times I heard it, no matter how many times I hear it. And I think it's more, for me, it's more an idea of hope rather than just a call for freedom. It's just that it makes me feel like if I continue to just get up every morning and do my best and listen to others, then everything will be fine.
Yeah, it's like a sort of love song to the self, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of. And it's been really helpful for me to have it and to know it during like more hard time of my life. I remember so I used to live in China during the pandemic, in 2019, and I was locked down in a hotel or quarantine or something like this. I don't remember really why I was there, but it's the first time that I really was constrained in a way, and that I was not completely free of all my actions, that someone was actually trying to control me, you know?
Yeah.
And so I was stuck in this hotel room, and my grandpa sent me a video of me reciting this same poem. I think I was like, so yeah, I was 7 years old, and we had to pass in front of the whole classroom and recite a poem. So I was training in front of my family. And well, anyways, I just remember seeing this video during the lockdown, and I was stuck far away from my family for any human presence, actually, and kind of panicking, thought I was kind of becoming crazy. And just seeing this video, listen to this poem, just made me think it will be okay, that I will go outside in no time and continue growing up and continue experience so many things.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's absolutely absolutely what that poem does, actually. It's really reassuring. And you're not the only person who has used this poem
Mm.
in this way to remind themselves that they can still keep hold of liberty, because the British forces dropped hundreds of thousands of photocopies of this poem into occupied France when they were beginning to retake France from the Nazis. And it was dropped as a message to all of the people in occupied France that they would soon be freed.
Yeah.
So it has this incredible place in Anglo-Franco history, that they would do this, and it's amazing because Paul Éluard and his wife did survive the occupation,
Yeah.
you know.
And I think in the beginning, if I remember correctly, he didn't want it to publish it at all. And he was convinced I think he went to a resistance meeting or something like this. And it was just time of desperation. Everyone just, it's not gonna work. We are working for nothing. And he decided to publish it in this clandestine book of poetry. And then, yeah, the British forces used it afterwards. I don't know, it has this effect each time you read it or heard it.
I think I've always been really dubious about poems written for political ends, but I think the reason why this poem has so much power is that that's not what it originally was. I mean, Éluard himself admits that originally the word that he was moving towards was not Liberté, it was the name of the woman he was in love with.
Yeah.
And it was only as he was writing the poem that the word liberty just kept coming to his mind. And he decided to use liberty rather than the name of his lover, which is why I think why it's so forceful, because it's so tender. It's both a
Yeah.
love poem and it's also a plea for liberation, you know?
Yes. I think that's why it's not, when you hear it, you don't feel like it has this huge political message and aim behind it. You're
Exactly.
just attracted by the hope and, yeah, the tenderness. It's
Exactly. So it's not
engaged.
it's not steeped in ideology, which I think is why it makes such a wonderful poem.
Yeah,
Mm.
and why it can actually touch anyone, no
Yeah.
matter the culture or the language or anything.
Yeah, and you can apply it to your own life, as you did,
Yeah,
as, as you did in the
yeah, yeah. Like I said, he's talking about so little random details of daily life,
yeah,
so it just makes you feel so much more concerned
yeah,
by it.
yeah. I really like this idea of writing your name on something to take ownership of a feeling, or of a commitment and so on.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a reminder that writing your name, owning something like that with your script, is actually a really, really important act about confirming your life or taking hold of your life,
Yeah, it's like making a promise to yourself, making something way more concrete, way more real than just when you write down an idea, everything just feels more, yeah, practical, real. It exists somewhere. There is a trace about it.
Yeah. Can I ask you a little bit about the idea of liberty yourself? You're doing studies at the moment in, is it international relations you're doing at the moment?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm doing
And
international
are you driven
relations.
by these principles of freedom, or are you driven by a different type of passion? What's making you want to work in this area?
I I think it's all came down to I wanted to work in a place where I could always meet people, talk to people, and no matter where they come from, or was really attracted by this idea of multicultural things
Yeah.
and this idea that everyone, so yeah, in a sense that everyone has their own liberty and should be able to do anything they want without being judged until it harms someone else, of
Mhm.
course. And I think I'm driven by this idea of respecting everyone's space
Mhm.
to be, and also to create an environment, a society where everyone can be able to express themselves as they wish and to enjoy their life as they wish and just to reach this sense of happiness
Mhm.
without having any societal expectations, any rules to fit.
Mhm.
Because, yeah, so I was driven by this idea and by, yeah, the ideal that we can maybe, if people start working together a bit more, that
Mhm.
we can actually reach efficient solutions and not efficient in a like economic sense of it, not maximizing anything, but efficient in the sense that everyone can have his part of happiness
Yeah.
within his culture.
Mm. And you've had experience of several different cultures by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
How long did you live in China?
I was in China for 4 years. I was
Hmm.
in France, Canada, also spent some, I did an exchange in the UK really recently. And yeah, this, I think this sovereignty of traveling a lot and being in a lot of different environments is really like the most important part in my life right now. And the thing that I'm learning the most off because it learned me I learn a lot in my study from academics and everything, but I just also learn a lot about life balance because I'm in my 20s too.
Hmm.
So I believe that my life balance personally works best when I'm able to move from country to countries, meet a lot of different people, be confronted to a lot of different perspectives all the time, and it's something that's bringing me happiness, and I need my own liberty to be able to do this.
And from your exposure to different cultures, do you feel that an idea such as liberty is something that people have in common, or do you think that it manifests in very different ways in different cultures? Or are you finding that there's
Yeah,
a core belief that everyone you're encountering has about freedoms?
I think it's a common belief, but I think it can take very different forms. It's just the fact of respecting all the forms it can have, I guess, and not being single-minded in this idea that liberty is the Western conception of it, and the assimilation with, I don't know, capitalism and
Hmm.
all of this. I guess I really don't see liberty and freedoms in that sense.
Hmm.
That's also, but probably because I've been, for example, in China, where political liberty is not a fact, which has been really hard for me in the beginning when I moved there for the first time. It was the first time I've ever been to some place where having freedoms was not the norm, at least. Not,
Yeah, or at least
not
it's
in,
figured in a different way, isn't it? You know,
yeah,
there's
yeah,
this idea about harmony that actually true freedom is group
yeah.
harmony. You know, it's not
There's
attached to individuals. You know.
yeah, that's that's why in the beginning it kind of struck me. I don't think they had Liberty. And then I started talking to people. I read a lot about Confucianism
Yeah, Confucian.
and this idea of harmony under heaven, and that everyone is working towards this goal, and that's how you reach happiness for everyone, and that everyone has this small part. And I I do
We had
believe
this
that.
idea in Europe a long time ago, the
Yeah,
ladder of being, where
yeah,
they had their place in the world.
yeah. And I think it's also a form of liberty in a sense.
A form of,
And it's also a form of liberty set and of freedom.
mhm.
And I don't know if it can be called into questions, obviously. We need to think about it, rethink about it, I think, 1,000 times, because it's never gonna be a defined concept.
Yeah. And also it's like, I guess when you take a culture that is so very different from the European culture, such as Chinese culture, you find liberty being expressed in very different ways. I always find the Chinese people I know to be very emotionally free. They're
Yeah.
not. Whereas I find that in Britain at the moment we are almost having our emotions performatized by prescriptions that we see on social media and on television about how we should perform our emotions and the right sorts of emotions to have. And I think for government and institutions, this is a really, un unconsidered area, if you like, how far we are permitted to either dictate or teach or encourage different types of responses to reality. It's going to become
Yeah.
a big issue in
And
the future.
even here as a student in Canada, I was talking about it with some friends yesterday night, that the fact that we have this idea of always being productive, always being doing something valuable, and not letting any space for creativity in a sense, or for just taking time for ourselves and without any goal in the end. And that can also be a form of limit to my liberty and freedoms, to always be in the need of fitting in
Mhm.
and of following this path to success, I guess. I
Yeah.
don't even know if this is success or not, but
Do you think that's something that's very French? Is it different in Canada? Do Canadians have a different view?
I think I I think it's pretty common in both, but I feel it way more since I came back here in Canada. It's kind of, yeah, this idea of, even, I don't know, even going to the gym or to do a sport is a to-do task.
Mhm.
It's not something you do to free your mind. It's something you do because it has to be done, and because everyone is telling you that this is the way to live a healthy and balanced life. So in your head, it's just become part of a to-do list instead of being a part of your own freedom, your own will.
Yeah.
And everyone is really, I'm almost graduating, so everyone is looking out for jobs and getting more and more ambitious, and because everyone has expectations, of course. And I think it's great to have ambitions. It's just that it creates this path that you may feel like, if you haven't done something, or if you haven't been, I don't know, president of a student association or something, you're just a mess. You're not going to do anything good with your life afterwards.
It's
And
very
yeah,
interesting. It's interesting that you're feeling this at the moment, because I sort of feel that because you've been given this chance when you were very young of living in a culture that was completely blind to you, where there were no cultural expectations of you because you were an alien in a foreign space,
yeah,
that you have had a glimpse of what many people never get a glimpse of, is how irrelevant actually the demands of your close social cultural circles are, and you've had a glimpse of what it's like to live without those strictures, if you like.
yeah,
And therefore that it doesn't have to be like that. That if you wanted to strike out and do something utterly different, you could survive it because you know what it's like to go into an unknown space. And many people never get that chance to prove to themselves that they can do that, you know?
Yeah, sometimes when I was in China, I was kind of feeling like I was invisible. I could do anything I wanted because no one cared. I was only staying there for a few years. I was a teenager living with my parents, full liberties, I guess. And this kind of gave me the best freedom I ever had
Yeah.
because I didn't have any expectations of anything and any path to follow or model to follow before me.
Mm-hmm. And then it becomes a question of how you then apply value. And
Yeah.
that's going back to this poem is Éluard making the choice through the writing of his name, making the choice to choose liberty, to choose to value that. And again, that's actually quite a big ask, actually. You know, I mean, this is
Yeah.
how governments tend towards indoctrination rather than choice. You know,
Yeah.
it's a very big responsibility to individually have to choose what your values are going to be and how you're going to live, rather than
Yeah.
living in the illusion that somehow they're innate to you when in fact they've just been hammered
Yeah.
into you from a very young age. But it
And
does,
being
yeah,
brave enough to write them down and to
yeah,
pass this tremendous step of writing, I
yeah,
think, because it kind of anchor everything in reality. So first you realize what you value the most, and then you are brave enough to live them in writing.
yeah,
So live them forever. You know?
yeah. One of the things I really like about Éluard is and French poets actually in general, except for the really, really hard ones like Mallarmé and Baudelaire.
Yeah.
Is that a lot of the poets that I've come across in France write in this very sort of crystalline way, where they apparently seem to be doing something very simple because their language is so pure and spare, but actually they are talking about what I think of as the big themes in humanity in an apparently simple way, but often their images are very, very thought provoking. You know, such as things like writing your name on a crown. What does that
Yeah.
mean? Um,
It just felt like he's putting really simple images, but if you take them one by one, you realize how
yeah,
beautiful the metaphor is
yeah,
and how,
yeah,
yeah, how everything is actually think about. It's not just a bunch of simple words making a pretty wording.
yeah.
It actually has a real deep meaning. Mhm.
I really like what you said about this poem, and I'm really happy that actually a poem can save your life, actually, at least save your
Yeah,
sanity. Because I've always believed that is the unique power of a poem, that if you carry a poem in your heart, in your darkest moments, it can save you, you know? And
yeah.
your grandfather sounds like a very wise person to send you that recording. That was really lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I do believe that there are some little tricks or little feel things that are really personal to everyone, and that can actually just save you or put you this little boost to start again,
yeah,
to reset when you need it. And for me, yeah, this poem is part of those things.
yeah. Because it roots you. It roots you in your family, in your culture, in your country's history, but also in yourself, in a
Yeah,
way.
it's
So all of those
almost a
things.
safe. It's almost a safe place to
Mm,
have.
mm,
Mhm.
yeah. Quitterie, I'd really love it now that you've told us about your experience with your poem. I'd really love it if you could read it to us again.
Yeah.
And then also after that, if you could read it for us in French, that would be really lovely.
Yeah, sure. We'll read it in English first. On my school notebooks, on my desk, and on the trees, on the sands of the snow, I write your name. On the pages I have read, on all the white pages, stone, blood, paper, or ash, I write your name. On the images of gold, on the weapons of the warriors, on the crown of the king, I write your name. On the jungle and the desert, on the nest, on the briar, on the echo of my childhood, I write your name. On the field, on the horizon, on the bird's wing, on the meal of the shadows, I write your name. On each eve of daybreak, on the sea, on the boats, on the demented mountain top, I write your name. On the fourth of the cloud, on the sweat of the storm, on the dense rain of the flat, I write your name. On the high path, on the deployed routes, on the crowd thorn squared, I write your name. On the lamp which is lit, on the lamp which is not, on my reunited thoughts, I write your name. On my dog, great-hearted and greedy, on his pricked ears, on his blundering toes, I write your name. On the harmony of the flesh, on the faces of my friends, on outstretched hand, I write your name. On the windows of surprises, on a pair of expectant lips, on a state far deeper in silence, I write your name. On the scramble hiding place, on my scattered lighthouses, on my wall, on my only, I write your name. On the abstraction without desire, on the naked solitude, on the marches of death, I write your name. And for the want of a word, I renew my life. I was born to know you, to name you, Liberté.
That's amazing. Gives you shivers, actually, when you listen to it.
Yeah.
And this power of naming, you know.
Yeah. I love the last paragraph of it.
Yeah.
It just always has this chilling effect.
Yeah. And it's about connection, you know.
Yeah.
Connection and communication. And this is what you're going to do in your career if you do international. You'll be
I hope so.
naming things in such a way that you manage to connect or things named. Yeah.
I hope so.
Thank you, Quitterie. Would you like to read this to us now in French?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Sur mes cahiers d'écolier, sur mon pupitre et les arbres, sur le sable, sur la neige, j'écris ton nom. Sur les pages lues, sur toutes les pages blanches, sur pierre, sang, papier ou cendre, j'écris ton nom. Sur les images dorées, sur les armes des guerriers, sur la couronne des rois, j'écris ton nom. Sur la jungle et le désert, sur les nids, sur les génés, sur l'écho de mon enfance, j'écris ton nom. Sur les merveilles des nuits, sur le pain blanc des journées, sur les saisons fiancées, j'écris ton nom. Sur les champs, sur l'horizon, sur les ailes des oiseaux et sur le moulin des ombres, j'écris ton nom. Sur chaque bouffée d'aurore, sur la mer, sur les bateaux, sur la montagne démente, j'écris ton nom. Sur la mousse des nuages, sur les sueurs de l'orage, sur la pluie épaisse et fade, j'écris ton nom. Sur les sentiers éveillés, sur les routes déployées, sur les places qui débordent, j'écris ton nom. Sur la lampe qui s'allume, sur la lampe qui s'éteint, sur mes maisons réunies, j'écris ton nom. Sur mon chien gourmand et tendre, sur ses oreilles dressées, sur sa patte maladroite, j'écris ton nom. Sur le tremplin de ma porte, sur les objets familiers, sur le flot des feux bénis, j'écris ton nom. Sur toute chair accordée, sur le front de mes amis, sur chaque main qui se tend, j'écris ton nom. Sur la vitre des surprises, sur les lèvres attentives, et bien au-dessus du silence, j'écris ton nom. Sur mes refuges détruits, sur mes phares écroulés, sur les murs de mon ennui, j'écris ton nom. Sur l'absence sans désir, sur la solitude nue, sur les marches de la mort, j'écris ton nom. Sur la santé revenue, sur le risque disparu, sur l'espoir sans souvenir, j'écris ton nom. Et par le pouvoir d'un mot, je recommence ma vie. Je suis née pour te connaître, pour te nommer Liberté. Paul Éluard.
Oh, wonderful. That was really gorgeous. Thank you so much for that. Can I remind our listeners that you'll be able to read the poem both in English and French on the link to the podcast or on my website, helenwing.com. Quitterie, thank you so much for taking the time to...
Thank you for inviting me. It was really a pleasure.
And I'm sure our listeners will be delighted to hear about how this poem saved you. And it's really nice to be reminded of the power of a poem, not only personally for someone who feels in some sort of crisis or trouble, but actually in the case of this poem, a poem that has been credited with giving an entire country hope at a time of total despair and desperation. So here's to Franco-British friendship. Long may it last.
Yeah. So, thank you so much.
Thank you, Quitterie. If you're a regular listener and are enjoying the podcast, it would mean the world to me if you could hit the follow button on your podcast app. And if you have a moment, leave a review and a 5-star rating. Remember, you can find the poems that feature in each episode on my website, helenwing.com. If you'd like to support the production costs of our Elixir Poetry podcast, please feel free to buy me a coffee. Thanks for listening.